The year is 1992. The town is Springfield, Missouri. And on the 7th of June, 3 women would vanish without a trace from a middle-class neighborhood. In 1992, Springfield, Missouri was a city in a state of transition, balancing its identity as a deeply religious Midwestern hub with the growing pains of a regional center. The city felt smaller and more centralized. Battlefield Mall was the undisputed social epicenter, especially for the younger crowd. South Campbell Avenue was developing, but it hadn't yet become the dense forest of strip malls it is today. Downtown Springfield wasn't the nightlife and loft living destination it is now. It was a bit more rugged, with many of the historic buildings still waiting for the massive revitalization efforts that would come in the late 80s and early 2000s. The Glenstone and Battlefield area was the place to be on a Friday night, with cruising still being a somewhat popular, if fading, pastime for local teenagers. The overall vibe was deeply rooted in traditional Ozark values, heavily influenced by the presence of several Christian colleges and the Assemblies of God headquarters. On the 6th of June, 2 best friends, Suzanne Elizabeth Streeter and Stacy Kathleen McCall, had just finished attending their graduation ceremony at Kickapoo High School. Suzanne was 19, 5'2", with shoulder-length blonde hair. She had a distinct scar on her upper right forearm and a small, non-cancerous tumour in the corner of her mouth. This gave her a unique smile. She was planning to attend beauty school. Stacy was 18, 5'3", with long, dark blonde hair and a dimple in the centre of her chin. She was a straight-A student and an athlete. She was the only child of Janice and Todd McCall, and her parents were famously protective of her. Stacy was preparing for college. At around 6 p.m, after the graduation ceremony, the two separated, going back to their family homes to celebrate and get ready for the graduation parties they would be attending. As you can imagine, the girls felt a sense of excitement that school was finally over and they were approaching the next chapter of their lives. At around 8 p.m, the girls headed out to start their celebrations. They would attend several graduation parties over the course of the night. Later that evening, Stacy called her mother to inform her that they would be staying at a friend's house in Battlefield. At 11:15 p.m, Suzie's mum, Sherrill, called her friend to speak to her about a chest of drawers she'd been painting. According to her friend, she sounded normal and relaxed. Sherrill Elizabeth Levitt, 47, was a skilled hairstylist at the studio's salon. Sherrill was a single mother who had recently moved into the Delmar Street house in March 1992. Friends described her as a chain smoker and a woman deeply dedicated to her home. When she wasn't working, she liked to keep herself busy around the house and was in the middle of a DIY project, refinishing a chest of drawers. After a night of partying, the two friends were tired and left their last party just before 2 a.m. They got in their cars and headed towards their friend Janelle's house. When they arrived, they realized the house was overrun with out-of-town guests and sleeping teenagers. Suzie suggested they head back to their mother's house on Delmar Street, which was a short drive across town. The girls left Janelle's place in their cars. Suzie was driving her green Dodge Colt. Stacy followed in her own car. This was the last confirmed sighting of the two girls. It had been estimated that the girls arrived at 1717 East Delmar Street at 2:30 a.m. on the 7th of June. Suzie arrived first and Stacy parked behind her. The following morning, Janelle Kirby and her boyfriend Mike Henson arrived at 1717 East Delmar Street. Janelle was frustrated. Neither of her friends had been answering her calls. They had plans to spend the day at Whitewater, a water park in Branson, and the girls were late. Janelle made her way to the front door and knocked loudly. She called out but got no reply. She could hear Suzie's dog barking hysterically from inside the house. Mark noticed some broken glass on the porch, and trying to be helpful, swept it up and discarded it. Later, investigators would lament that he destroyed potential tool marks, fingerprints, and the exact spray pattern of the glass that could have told police if the globe was broken from the outside or by someone exiting the house. Getting fed up, Janelle tried the front door and found it was unlocked. She opened the door slowly and poked her head in and called out again. She received no answer. Janelle picked up Susie's dog and tried to calm it down. On the living room floor lay 3 purses lined up neatly in a row. Janelle thought this was a bit odd, but quickly forgot about it as she searched the rest of the house. It was empty. Coming back into the living room, she noticed that the answering machine light was flashing. It was full. She played back the messages. Some of them were hers from earlier. One of them was strange. Janelle described it as a lewd prank call of a sexual nature, made by a male whose voice she didn't recognise. She erased it to make room on the machine. Many have speculated that the message was relevant to the case, but we will never know. Janelle and Mike decided to get into their car and drive around looking for the missing women. At around 1 p.m, Stacy's mother, Janice McCall, arrived at the house. She had been calling the residents all morning and grew increasingly panicked when no one answered. Janelle also arrived back at the house at around the same time. When Janice entered the house and saw the scene, her mother's intuition immediately told her something was wrong. She immediately noticed the purses and knew something wasn't right. They still contained money, cigarettes, keys, and identification. Both Sherrill and Suzie were heavy smokers. She noticed a pot of seemingly fresh coffee sat in the kitchen. It hadn't been touched. The bathroom showed signs of recent use. There were damp towels, and the women's makeup and hair products were still out. To Janice, it looked as if they had been interrupted in the middle of getting ready for the day. She found the clothes they were wearing the night before, neatly folded along with their jewellery. During this time, the telephone rang and Janice answered, hoping it was one of the women calling. It wasn't. As soon as she said hello, a strange man on the other end started making lewd and sexual comments targeted at Janice. She hung up in disgust. Investigators would later interview Janice regarding this call. She didn't hear any identifiable background noises and didn't recognise the voice. By this time, Janice was in a state of panic. The girls were nowhere to be seen. She called the Springfield Police Department. By the time the Springfield Police Department officially treated the house as a crime scene on June 8th, numerous friends and family members had walked through the home. They sat on the beds, used the phone, drank from the kitchen, and cleaned up ashtrays. Any touch DNA or stray hair was lost. The police and FBI eventually launched a massive multi-agency search. They cleared nearby sinkholes, old mines, and the vast expanses of the Mark Twain National Forest. One of the most credible leads came from a neighbour who claimed to have seen a 1960s or 70s style silver green Dodge panel van in the area at 6:30 a.m. on June 7th. The witness claimed to see a blonde female matching Susie's description in the driver's seat, looking distressed, while a male voice from behind her allegedly warned, "Don't do anything stupid." Despite hundreds of tips, the van was never located. A waitress at a local George's steakhouse claimed she saw the 3 women at approximately 3 a.m. on the night they vanished. She noted they seemed on edge and were accompanied by a man. This lead was eventually discounted, as the timeline didn't align with the girls leaving Janelle's at 2:15 a.m. Over 5,000 leads have been investigated. 3 names stand out. Robert Craig Cox, a former Army Ranger and convicted kidnapper. In 1992, he was living in Springfield and working at a local car lot. Cox was arrested in Texas for a different kidnapping years later. When questioned about the Springfield Three, he told investigators, "I know they're dead. I know where they are, but I'm not telling you until my mother dies." Cox's mother passed away and he still hasn't talked. Many investigators believe he is a pathological liar seeking attention. Gerald Carnahan, a wealthy local businessman's son with a history of predation. In 2010, Carnahan was convicted for the 1985 murder of Jackie Johns, using DNA. He was a known stalker in the Springfield area. Carnahan had the resources and the local knowledge to commit such a crime. He was allegedly seen at the same graduation parties as the girls. However, no physical link has ever been found, and he was never officially named a suspect in the Springfield Three case. Larry Dwayne Hall, a suspected serial killer who travelled the Midwest for Civil War reenactments. Hall is the subject of the book and TV series Blackbird. He has confessed to over 30 murders, often involving young women he abducted in his van. Hall was known to be in the Missouri area during the early 90s. His modus operandi involved following women and using a van for transport. Like Cox, Hall is a frequent confessor who often recants, making his intel difficult to verify. In 2007, an investigative reporter named Kathy Bard brought a new lead to light. A tipster claimed the women were buried in the foundation of the south parking garage at Cox Hospital, which was under construction in June 1992. Bard hired a ground-penetrating radar expert to scan the area. The results were chilling. The GPR identified 3 distinct anomalies approximately 3 feet beneath the concrete. The expert stated the shapes were consistent in size and depth with what could be human remains, though not conclusive. Despite the radar findings, the Springfield Police Department has deemed it too difficult to dig. They reasoned that it could damage the structural integrity of the hospital. The hospital was privately owned, and they did not have enough evidence to obtain warrants for such an action. They also claimed the concrete for that specific section wasn't poured until months after the disappearance. Theories. The law enforcement ruse. A popular theory among profilers is that the women were confronted by someone posing as a police officer or a utility worker. If a man in a uniform knocked on the door in the early morning, claiming there was a gas leak or an emergency, Sherrill would have opened the door. From there, they could be easily controlled with a gun, which explains the lack of any signs of a struggle. The grave robber revenge. Suzie had recently dated a man named Dustin Reckler shortly before the disappearance. Suzie and Sherrill had provided information to the police regarding a grave-robbing ring involving Dustin and his friends. Investigators theorized that Dustin silenced the women to protect himself. Dustin and his associates passed polygraph tests, and no physical evidence for the women's disappearance was ever linked to him. There are many other theories ranging from a single stalker to multiple perpetrators. None of these theories can be proven. Each explains some details, while leaving others unanswered. What they all share is the same conclusion. This was not random, not impulsive, and not accidental. Whatever happened inside that house required control, confidence, and timing. The Springfield Three were legally declared dead in 1997, but for the McCall, Levitt, and Streeter families, there is no such thing as a closed case. Janice McCall keeps a dedicated phone line in her home, the same number from 1992, just in case Stacy ever finds a way to call. The house on Delmar Street has seen multiple owners since, but the broken porch light remains a symbol of the night Springfield lost its innocence. Is the answer under the concrete of a hospital garage? Is it in the mind of a convict in a Texas prison? Or is it buried in the silence of a witness who is too afraid to speak? The facts are all we have. The women are gone. The glass is swept away. The message is deleted. All that remains is the question, where are they?